Hello friends! I'm here to attempt to do my December reading wrap-up. December has been one of the hardest months I've ever had in my life for some very personal reasons, which I am not able to go into right now. Just know that if I seem a little enthusiastic than usual, or if maybe I seem a little not myself, that's why. Bear with me. I'm going to go through the 7 books that I read in December. Let's just get into them, okay? Okay. First, I read The Descent by Jeff Long. This was recommended to me by a subscriber or someone who watched my Actually Scary Horror Books video. And I'm so glad that they did because I really enjoyed this. This ended up being a 4-star read for me. This is about mankind coming to the realization that there is a vast network of underground tunnels, like catacombs, tunnels, all below the surface that connect the entire, like the span of the globe. And what they find is down there are these humanoid-like creatures, and they begin to question, are they human or are they something more? Are they demons? Are they from hell? Like, what is this? And so this is a horror book, but I would consider it more thriller. I didn't find it actually scary. It does contain some graphic scenes. It has a lot of disfigured beings. It talks a lot about anthropological things, you know, where humans come from and how we evolve and what we are made up of. But it also delves into a little bit of religion and the reality of maybe Satan and things like that. It was definitely an adventure story. There is a journey, and this author really leans heavily on the claustrophobia aspect to entice some of those embedded fears that many people have about enclosed spaces without access to sunshine and freedom. So those parts of this book were really well done, and it really makes you ask a lot of questions about our history, evolution, and what we assume is the truth of our history, of our beginnings. Are those assumptions valid? Are they real? In that way, there is a lot of fantastical elements to this book because he really does portray some characters that are brutally deformed and some life after death things. I found it very easy to read, very easy to fall into, and the desire to find out what the outcome had in store for me kept me going. It was really very well done in that aspect. There were times when it felt a little bit slow as the details were being revealed, but I didn't have a problem with that. I really enjoy when the author digs into the details, you know, the more scientific aspects of what could be happening and the historical elements and mythological elements, and twisting those things on their head and making you question the reality of the situation and the truth. I recommend this book if you enjoy that type of thriller because it does mention Satan and, you know, of that nature. It talks about Jesus and the origins of that and how much truth there is in those beliefs that we hold. Struggling, guys, I'm struggling, but bear with me. I recommend this highly if that's something you are interested in. The next one that I read was Small Town Horror by Ronald Malfi. This is a new release that came out in 2024. I had read one other book from Ronald Malfi before, and it was called Come With Me, which was very much a mystery thriller. It was a great book. I really enjoy Ronald Malfi's writing. He has a great way of producing elements that are both creepy and disturbing but laying the breadcrumbs that you need to follow. This story deals with a group of childhood friends. These friends have a traumatic event happen to them when they are in high school, and beyond that, they go their separate ways. And this book takes place mostly 20 years after the fact, when there are supernatural-like occurrences taking place in which it calls this group back together again. Ron O'Melfi is really good at using like those base fears, those instinctual fears that we have even like as children. Being afraid of the dark, the unknown, basements, and like just the weird noises and creaks that you hear in your house. Also believing in karma, like the things that you did coming back to haunt you, and how that can affect your psyche and make you read into certain events maybe more than what is actually there. Or are you? Or are you? That is what he does, is he really makes you question where that line is between reality and the supernatural. He does a really great job at instilling some of those nightmare elements into his writing. I really like this. I think I gave it 3.5 stars because it didn't really scare me. Like I said, it had some of those creepy aspects that play off of like your childhood fears and nightmares. The story itself was pretty good. It just wasn't my favorite. I think his writing is very simplistic and straight to the point. It's very accessible and even visceral at times, but I think that the overall premise of the story kind of felt somewhat derivative, not very, I don't know. I cannot. Oh God, help me. I think my main complaint in this book was the pacing. It's a little slow, a little meandering at times. The characters felt a little bit lacking. They weren't fully ever described in any detail. You had to make them up in your mind as far as like visual or... I really think that in thriller books, like sensory details and visual details are so important to immerse your reader and for them to experience that sense of dread and terror or uncomfortableness. Like you really need to speak to those senses. So yeah, I gave this a 3.5 stars. It was a good read. The next one that I read was The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. What did I give this? A 4? A 4.5 star? I don't remember. I remember that I really enjoyed it. And for a person who is not super into battle scenes, the battle scenes in this actually really did it for me. Like it provided me with what I need and want to enjoy battle scenes. It was fluid and descriptive enough that I understood the actions that were taking place, but not so technical and descriptive that I don't care and lost interest. This is the story of Misaki. This is the story of Misaki, basically, and her family. It's a journey from her beginnings into adulthood. After she has been in an arranged marriage and she has children and she's striving so hard to feel that motherly instinct, to feel love for her children, she really struggles with that for a while because she gave up so much of her identity to this marriage, which she didn't want, that she did this for her family. But then a bigger threat comes along. It makes her realize that what she has cultivated in her life means more to her than she ever realized. This book has a lot to do with like propaganda and female roles in society, the role that media and government play in our lives and how they build a certain narrative in order to keep the public living and acting in a certain way. It is about not always accepting things at face value, instead reading between the lines, discovering the truth on your own, the different elements of power that exist within ourselves and around us, and how we have to cultivate a life in order to fulfill certain needs, and what we do to make those things happen and how we make those things happen. And it also is very deep on certain levels as far as grief and regret, the power of a parent's love, It's a generational story in so many ways. This is a really powerful read for someone who is a self-published author, and this won the SPF BO5, I believe it was. Yeah, I highly recommend. It's a really fast read. It almost reads like YA in that it uses really simple words and terms. There's not a lot of unpacking to do. Like, it's pretty straightforward, but also very well written, because a lot of times it reads like a fable, like there are these embedded moral lessons. And yeah, it was just really great, a really great heartfelt book, and I highly recommend it. Next, I read The Exorcist's House by Nick Roberts, I believe. I will put a picture up for you. I read this as a part of my endeavor to find books that actually scare me, that are actually scary, knowing that I appreciate and feel scared from books that deal with realistic type supernatural events like possessions or evil entities, anything that has a basis in possibility. Things that are too far-fetched, too unbelievable, you really need to suspend your disbelief. They really don't scare me. I might enjoy them. I might think that they're fun to read, but things that scare me, they have a basis in reality, in possibility. So The Exorcist's House is about this house where a self-taught, self-proclaimed exorcist lives, and something tragic and horrible happens. He passes away. And then about a year later, a family of 3, soon to be 4, they buy this house. As soon as they move in, things start to occur. This one really gave me vibes of The Evil Dead mixed with like the exorcism of Emily Rose, because in many ways, a lot of times it felt very satirical to me and almost seemed like how Evil Dead is creepy and scary, but also is poking fun at some of these scary elements in movies and books and things. It did a lot of things all wrapped up in one, and that's what this book felt like, because there were at least 3 distinct scenes that really scared the pants off me. Like, I was hovering under my blanket, putting the book down an hour or 2 before bed, checking the dark corners when I was walking down the hallway at night. It is definitely an interesting take on classical horror, and it was horror executed in a way that felt classically derived, but also fresh and new. And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought that the characters were chef's kiss. Like, they were so much fun to read because they definitely had their distinctive personalities. And early on, as in most horrors, you find out their faults because the authors genuinely use those faults to use against them in the story. Because what does evil do? It finds out your deepest, darkest secrets and then plays on them to instill more terror and fright, put separation between the others around you. It did that really, really well. There are nods to The Exorcist in this story. There are nods to The Omen in this story. When I read this book, I didn't even realize, but it is part of a series. I will be reading book 2 soon. They are both on Kindle Unlimited, so if that is something you're interested in trying out, I highly recommend it. It was such a fun read. It is definitely scary at certain points, so keep that in mind if you are sensitive to that type of thing. But I definitely recommend it. I think I gave this like a 4-star. I did a really bad job of like keeping my notes this time around, but it was probably my favorite that I read in my ultimate horror video that I just did recently. It was a really great one. So next I read The Case Against Satan, and this is a Penguins classic that I downloaded on my Kindle and read. So again, I will pop up a picture here of the cover. This is a story about a new parish priest who is taking over a congregation from an older parish priest, and the priest, you can tell, is struggling with his faith, which is classical in any kind of horror exorcism type book. That's exactly what this is focusing on. A lot of it is this priest and his doubt, his struggle with his faith, because he encounters this father and daughter, and the daughter is having a lot of new issues. She's having a repulsion to the church, whereas before she was very devout. She begins saying these really vulgar things, and she begins being overly sexualized and like trying to seduce people. So of course the father and the daughter are struggling there. They want help. She realizes that something's wrong and she's asking for help. And so one day the daughter shows up to the priest's or to the rectory, and the bishop happens to be there with the new priest. He hears about her case and her story, and he administers these tests, and he's like, this girl is possessed, boy. You need to be the one to exorcise her. So that's what this is basically in a nutshell. And I don't think that is spoilers, because it pretty much says that in the synopsis. Like I said, there was only really one scene that I felt was actually scary. The other scenes, again, were more based on the priest's faith and his struggle with alcohol. It was a really great read. The writing was simple and direct, unflinchingly descriptive in certain aspects, considering it was written in 1969. One thing I really enjoyed in this story is the bishop talks about coincidence and how he does not believe there is such a thing as coincidence, that everything that happens for a reason, and to disregard coincidence is to disregard God's hand nudging you in a certain direction. Also talks about the division between mental illness and exorcism, and how there were certain people in the past who have taken the miracles found in the Bible performed by Jesus and actually subscribed them to mental illness, and saying what he actually did was help them to overcome their mental illness. Take from that what you will. It was a great story. I really enjoyed it, although like I said, only one really scary scene. I don't remember what I rated it, maybe a 3 or 4. I'd have to look. Next, I read The Demonic. I gave this 4 stars because while at the very end, not to spoil it, but there is a definite aspect of the suspension of disbelief, because it gets a little woo at the end. But the scary, creepy, haunted house elements of this story were A+. Like, there were scenes in this book that had me hanging on to my chair. And I love when that happens, because I find that really hard to do in a lot of senses, but this one did it. So in this book, there is Danny, and she finds out that her father, who she is estranged from, has passed away. And you find out slowly that they had a really horrible history. As they go to this house to collect her inheritance, you find out more and more. And it is told from Danny's POV, her husband, and her 2 children. It bounces between the 4. And it really just wastes no time getting down to business, getting down to the creepy, scary parts that just flood you. And it really just goes at a breakneck speed. Like, once it hits the gas, like it doesn't let off, which I really liked. It kept me kind of hanging on and wondering what the heck was going to happen. There were scenes that gave me chills and that made my skin crawl. Yeah, I highly recommend this. If you enjoy haunted house stories, this is a really great one. It has a horrible ending. Horrible as in like terrible, just terrible, horrible. Not bad writing, terrible, like horrific, terrible, okay? But I will say that it definitely made me realize that a lot of times beginnings and even middle parts of scary books are often scarier than the ending. Somehow the climax either falls short or is just too far-fetched and too unbelievable. And so that really just kind of takes away from that aspect of the unknown and what my imagination is providing and adding to the scary elements. So that was definitely one thing I found to be at fault with this book. But there was a cool thing at the end. The author talks about his inspiration for the story, and he says that there are actually 2 pieces that are based on real life events. One was the Brass Farm murders of 1682, and the other was The Dark Angel, Mary Ann Cotton. So if any of you are interested in researching like scary historical events that are based in truth, those are the two that he mentioned. And I did briefly look them up, and there's not a lot of information. Do with that what you will. Okay, and the last book that I read was Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. I gave this 3.75 stars. This is about a knight and an orphan girl and a priest who embark on this journey to save the world, in a nutshell. So heaven and hell have descended upon earth and they are battling it out. And this girl, for whatever reason, for whatever purpose, has been chosen and has been touched by angels and can see things and perform these miracles. I think that this book was really fun. It's a journey. There are horror elements for sure, but it also mixes in some humor at times, which was really great. Although I will say my biggest complaint with this was the disconnection that I felt from the characters. I never really felt that invested in their journey. Like, it was entertaining and I wanted to see what was going to happen, but I never really felt one way or the other about the outcome, for them anyway. You know, that for me detracts from the overall story, and I was a little disappointed in that. The things that I really enjoyed is the depiction of the dark angels, you know, the demons, and the way that they rain down their fire upon the earth. I thought that those scenes were really well done, as well as the glimpses of the angels and the way that they insert themselves almost, what's the word? Almost unknowingly, like behind the scenes. Those aspects were really well done. Like I said, some of the horror scenes were a little bit fantastical for my liking. Like I said just earlier, I do prefer when there is some plausibility to the horrific acts, to the scary parts. When it seems too over the top and too unbelievable, like, it really doesn't scare me. It might be cool and fun and entertaining, but I wouldn't say it's really scary. I will say too that the title seemed very apt because, you know, fire. While fire is destruction and chaos, it is also rebirth and a chance to rebuild anew. And that's kind of exactly what this is. It is ridding the world of all the torment and sin and temptation, bringing about a new lease on life for the survivors, and hopefully instilling some new value to their life. I think that's it. Like, I did like this. I thought that it was good. I just thought I had higher expectations just from the descriptions that I had heard about it being horror and religion and fantasy all wrapped up in one. Angels and demons battling on earth. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of times it just felt very cartoonish almost, you know? I almost felt like I was reading a comic book sometimes. Like, that I could visually just feel like these images with cartoon characters. Is that weird? Maybe it's just me and my weird brain. Anyway, that was my reading month. 7 books, that's not bad, and I'm certainly happy with that. I have some interesting reading plans coming in the next month, and hopefully I can find the will and the desire to read. I have been slowly getting back into it, and just bear with me. That's all I can say. I'm doing my best over here. That's all I want to say. But I am planning on, there is a buddy read with John over at Talking Story and a bunch of other really great booktubers. So if you're interested, we're going to be reading The Curse of the Miswraith. And this is a rather large series, and I believe the plan is to read one of these books every other month this year and then do a live show discussing our experience reading it. And there is even talk of Janny partaking, and so that is super exciting, and I am so honored to have been included in this, and I can't wait to read this. Will this be my first Janny Wirtz book? And I've heard such exceptional things about her writing and the way that she cultivates her fantasy worlds and characters. So I am so excited for this. So that's that. I'm also planning on starting my reread of the Sun Eater series because, as some of you may know, the final book, Book 7 in the series, is set to come out at the end of 2025, we hope. And so my plan is to reread the 6 books before that happens. So that might be a little ambitious of me, but I'm hoping that I can do that. I kind of think that I will be able to because I just love the Sun Eater series so much, and I've already read them. So this is going to be rereading with a new set of eyes, you know what I mean? And picking up things that I may have missed the first time. So there's that. And then I also have coming your way soon another book haul that includes a ton of horror books and these are not new horror books per se. These are new to me. These are horror books that I've heard other booktubers talking about and raving about their experience reading them, and I have been on a horror kick lately, and so I just picked up a bunch of books after Christmas with some Christmas money that I had, and of course the great sales that are happening. I got a bunch of them over on Book Outlet, and so yeah, that'll be coming soon, so keep your eye out for that. But other than that, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of these books that I read. If you've read them, if you're interested in reading them, if you have any questions for me, let me know. I love chatting with you guys in the comments, and I'm so glad you're here, and stick around. There's more to come. 2025 needs to be, has to be, must be the best year. It's got to be better than 2024 because 2024 was the worst year of my entire life. And that's being generous. Okay, let's end this video on a positive note. I hope that you had a wonderful, wonderful holiday and that you enjoyed time with your friends and family and loved ones and that you read great books. 2025, here we come. Talk to you soon. Bye.